Welcome aboard B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Irgin. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Harav Yakov of Smith Shlita on moving Muktza when the space is needed. Tiltul Muktza l'tzarech mekomo. To have the great schus sponsoring a shir, call Irgin heter 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
Shaila comes up often that there's something on the dining room table that's not Shabbos'dig. A child put a hammer, a cell phone, and you want to move it off. But you start thinking, is there a heter? Because I don't really need the space where the hammer is occupying. I have a big table and a small family. What do I need the space? But an interesting Shaila where someone saw in the sink there was a cell phone. Now, how it got there? The answer is, like every other question, there's children. And he wanted to take it out of the sink because he can't wash onto the cell phone, he'll break the cell phone. But then the question is that tzorech mekomo? He's not using the space where the cell phone is occupying. It's a tiny little space. So this and probably 30 more shilas, Bez Hashem, we'll hope to clarify with one simple yisoid, and that's why this type of shir is my favorite. You see how one yisoid, a clarity in one inyan gives us the guidance to so many shilas. As we know, the Gemara says in Masechet Shabbos, Kuf Chav Daled, Davar shemalachta le'isa, we call a kli shemalachta le'isa, you're allowed to move l'tzorech gufo, or l'tzorech mekomo, but michama l'tzeil, to move it out of the sun or out of the street so it won't be stolen, there's no heter. So if you notice, we're only talking about a kli shemalachta le'isa. I want to be very clear. Today's sugi is only kli shemalachta le'isa. You can't move a stone l'tzorech gufo because not the heter of kli shemalachta le'isa. We're talking about a real kli shemalachta le'isa only. And a few weeks ago, we were going to talk about the sugya of gufo. What does it mean, gufo? Does it mean dafka? It's regular use, intended use, and that's a different share. This morning we're focusing on the word mekomo. And as I said, believe it or not, there'll be 30 plus shilas just understanding what the word mekomo means. Simply, mekomo means I need the place. For example, a classic example, someone left the hat brush on a chair. And he can't sit on top of a hat brush. A hat brush, a kli shemalachta le'isa. So he takes off the hat brush because he needs the makom. There, he's using the makom that the hat brush was occupying. So that's what we call a regular, conventional muktza, which is muta l'tzarech mekomo. Our case is different. Our case, there's a hammer on the table and you don't need a place. But it's not Shabbos'dig. Okay, that's a nice need, but it's not tzorech mekomo. You're not using the place of the hammer. Or you want the sink vacant, you want the cell phone out of the sink. But that's not mekomo, that's an indirect mekomo. So what's the shayla? So it's really beautiful, because the way the Shulchan Aruch describes it in Shin Ches Siv Gimel, Bein l'tzorech mekomo, dahainu shetzorech l'shtamesh b'makom shakli munach sham. The simple is you want to use the place. But in the case of Nish Shabbos'dik, you're not using the place. You want an out. You want it to be out of here. So what's the shayla then? So if you look at the Meiri in Kuf Chav Dalet, the Goyin in your day, we'll soon see Reish Samach Vav Gimel, the Chashulcha Bayos and Siv Ches, all explain why is Chama l'tzeil asa. You left an expensive item outside. Living in Brooklyn, you know, by tomorrow morning it's going to be adopted. It's gone. That's Mechama l'tzeil. Why is that asa? The teretz is Chazal wa Mater, so the Meiri, l'tzorech Shabbos. Tzorech gufo, mekomo is tzorech Shabbos. Saving the Muktza item is not tzorech Shabbos. You can't use till Sunday. So why is there a heter? So now the shayla is, if you think about it, we have two extremes in the Gemara. Mechama l'tzeil is asa, tzorech gufo mekomo is muta. My question now is, how about it's none of the above? You see, when I take it off table because it's not Shabbos'dik, I wouldn't say it's tzorech gufo or mekomo. But then again, it's definitely Shabbos'dik. It's definitely not like Chama l'tzeil that is not the tzorech Shabbos. This is a tzorech Shabbos. So the question is very simple. How do you define the word mekomo? If mekomo, the way the Shulchan Aruch says, is literal, there won't be a heter. You have to have a direct use. But if the ikka problem is that it's not tzorech Shabbos, mechamal l'tzeil, then anything that's legitimately needed for Shabbos would be included in the heter. And what makes this very challenging in the Gemara is very little about the whole heter of tzorech gufo mekomo. But at least gufo has a pretty specific meaning. I need the item. But the question is, what about mekomo? How do you look at mekomo, and what does mekomo mean? So the emes, a lot has been written. It could be probably a shir just for itself, but we have a big agenda today. But again, the way the Meiri explains the concept of Michama L'Tzeil is awesome, and his lashon is that the issa, the vaday, the issa is mipnei she'ein kan tzorech Shabbos klal, v'nimtze metalta l'tzorech chol. Now, the issa is if it's not a tzorech Shabbos. Maybe we could assume if you're taking it off because it's not Shabbos'dig, that's the most beautiful tzorech Shabbos. And the emes, we could add something that's pretty convincing. We spoke about this a few weeks ago, Taka, when someone's making a meal on Shabbos. So after he finishes, the moil finishes the meal, he's allowed to put it down in the right place. So this is a big tumult in the Paiskim, and the Gra in Yeridei, Reish Samach Vav Gimel, he asks, why is that mutter after you finish the meal to put it down in the right place? The second shel mila is not a kli shel machta le'issa. It's a Muktza machta chesar and kiss. And by other muktzas, there's no heter putting back oida b'yad wherever you want. So why taka is this Ismail shel mila? Why can you put it back in the place wherever you want? So the Goyen explains, and obviously he implied this, that on Shabbos, since you're using it beheta, because you have to make the mila, so once you have it in your hand, and it's essentially a kli shemalach le'issa, besides chesar and kiss, but chesar and kiss is not bothering you now you're using it, zok the Goyen, dafka kli shemalach le'issa, she'einay muktza, that it's really not a muktza. Varaya shemut l'taltla. You're allowed to move it. The tzorech gufo mekomo. Rak michama l'tzeil asa, tavish lo l'tzorech. So the way the Goyen explains is that a kli shemalach l'issa is essentially not muktza, but there's a certain restriction. It has to be tzorech gufo or mekomo. So the Goyen, once you have it in your hand, and it's no longer muktza, and it's not michama l'tzeil, because oida b'yadai, you put it where you want. So the Goyen is saying that they never asid malachta l'issa only michama l'tzeil, but tzorech gufo mekomo and oida b'yadai is fine. The Levush in our Simon spells out malachta l'issa mutar talta tzorech gufo mekomo v'lo yinesa ela machmas michama l'tzeil. So he's putting it, the dagish is everything is mutar except michama l'tzeil. And I saw a very thorough tshuva in the Machzal Yo Simon Chelik Aleph Simon Mem Vav that proves this point very conclusively. His shaila was, can you move something that is not Shabbos'dig? Is there a heter, the fact it's not Shabbos'dig? So he proves from many sources that the only issa is if it's like Chama Mitzeil, that it's not Shabbos'dig. But once you're moving it because you want to get rid of it, and now that's Shabbos'dig, as Amacham Batzel, it's mutter. So we definitely have a case, we see a case for this yisoid, that basically, tzorech gufo mekomo is lav dafka. The issa is anything that is not a tzorech Shabbos. But you must realize something that's obvious here. The fact that the Gemara spells out gufo u'mekomo, the Gemara could have said tzorech Shabbos in michama l'tzeil loy. Why did the Gemara specify these two examples, tzorech gufo and mekomo? This seems to indicate that it has to be one of the two heterim. Gufo or Mekomo. But who said just because it's not, you were doing it because it's not Shabbos'dig is enough of a heter? We don't see that in the Gemara. The Gemara says it has to be tzorech gufo mekomo. And there is a Rashba that many of the Achrayim point to that says it's Kamat specifically. The Rashba quoted by Tila David, it's in the old print Chelik Bey, Siman Nun Aleph, discusses a shvud, a heavy piece of metal that they use when they're roasting, and it's lying around on Shabbos, and it's going to cause danger. It's a dangerous situation. So the Rashba says that since it's a dangerous situation, you're allowed to move it, even though it's Muktza, like a koitz, a thorn of Sharam, you're allowed to move it. As I state in the Rashba. Frag the Tila David, why don't you say Pashit? I can't have this thing lying here because it might hurt someone. And why don't you say it's Mutta al Tzorech Mekomo? I want to make it more Shabbos'dik and not have a danger in my house. Zok the Tila David, al Korcha Loima, that the heter tzorech gufo mekomo is only kishetzorech lasois eizadav b'mokem hazeh. He says, no one's certain you're using the place. Aval me'ena roitza. But if the only rotzen is sheyeh mokem panui, that the place should be empty, that's not tzorech mekomo. So you have a Rashi, but it's a beferish. If the Gemara said tzorech mekomo, there's a reason for that. And you can't just be mekel because you have a tzoirach. In other words, tzoirach Shabbos is not enough. The Debetzina Rav and Chelik Chesim and Chavtes has another raya, and he says, Chazal asim michamol l'tzeil, right? That for sure. You have a very expensive item outside, you can't bring it in, even though it's going to get stolen. Isn't that also a tzoirach Shabbos? The whole Shabbos you're going to be worried, oy vey, vey chasar and kiss. Why isn't every chamel l'tzeil a tzorech Shabbos to keep your menuchas on Shabbos? Must be that it has to be gufo or mekomo, and not just that it's needed for Shabbos. Lamaisa, I saw the Chutshani in Chelik Gimel, Amud Mem Tes has also a beautiful discussion, and he points to a different source. The Gemara talks about when there's something on the behemoth's back, a heavy item, it's not good for the behemoth. So you have to get it off the behemoth's back on Shabbos. The problem is that the items are Muktza klisha melachta le'issa. So the Gemara says, don't worry, take cushions, karam v'kistais, pillows, whatever it is, put on the ground, and then move it off, klachayad, off the animal's back. So then it won't break when it falls down, and you'll alleviate the animal's suffering. So the Rishonim ask, the Meiri and others ask, why do you have to come on to this whole trick of taking it off, dropping it into pillows, it might break, might not break? Don't you want the animal's back to be panui? Don't you want the animal's back to be not with that heavy load? So why don't you say it's mutar al tzorech mekomo? Then you can pick up the load, be a dime, and put it to the side. Why do you have to shuckle it off? I hope it doesn't break. Don't you want the animal's back to be empty from that heavy load? Obviously, we see that the fact that you want it off, even though wanting it off is a good reason, is not enough. It has to be, I'm using the place. If you want to sit on the animal's back, which you now do on Shabbos, but that would be tzorech mekomo. But just the fact that you want it off is not a valid heter. And there's another raya that we'll soon see the Paiskim discuss. What do you do if there's tefillin left outside? It's going to get ruined, it'll get stolen. Tefillin's a klish machta l'issa. Why don't you bring it in al bezoyin? Why don't you bring it tack in? Forget about the bezoyin of it. Why don't you say it's tzorech mekomo? I want it out of this place. Tzorech Shabbos. It's not chamel l'tzeil. Teretz, all these rayas are pointing, it has to be a positive tzorech mekomo. Now, I'm not going to be machri in this huge shaila, but the Shmir Shabbos, I think, takes a very reasonable approach. And he says basically that, and this is in Perek Chaf Sif Yud, that you want to use a place of something, that's a legitimate tzorech mekomo. And then he gives a mashal, which I think expands it somewhat. And he says, let's say you just want it away because it's not Shabbos'dig, there won't be a heter. So again, he's saying that it's lav dafka any tzorech. It has to be a tzorech mekomo. So basically, although the Masalio had some rayas, but as we saw, the lashon of the Gemara, the fact that Gemara discusses that behemoth's back, is enough to say it has to be some type of tzorech Shabbos. But let me show you how we're going to expand that a little bit more. Easy shaila, small table, big family, and there's a Muktza on the table. Machtalis. So there you need a place, fine. Moving the hat brush off the chair is mutlach haladayis. Someone left tefillin on your stender or your place in shul, and you want to daven. So that's a regular tzorech mekomo. You can't daven when there's tefillin there. Now, lamaisa, does the stender become a basis? It's for two reasons. For three reasons. Number one, he's not the bailam to make a bus on my stender. Number two, it was shachach. Even the bailam would not be a basis. And number three, many places can hold klisha malachkel issa cannot make a basis. What's basis? It's stuck for Shabbos. But malachkel issa that you could move the tzorech of mekomo, it's not a basis. So that's all the regular examples of klisha malachkel issa the tzorech mekomo. A more challenging, slightly more challenging shayla is when someone left the box of candles on the table, which is very disturbing. Like it shows you're not organized. Shabbos, anyhow, moving a box of candles off the table. So pashtis, if you need a place, this would be a very valid tzorech mekomo. The only issue the Mishnah Berurah discusses in Sivkot Lamed Daled is the heter is a klisha malachta le'issa. But candles, is a candle a keli? You light it and it burns down. Maybe a keli has to last. It has to have a reuse. So there are some places that hold like that a candle, matches are not kelim because it's used once and burns up. It's gone. But Mishnah Berurah said beferish, a ner shel shaiva is not anything less than a klisha malachta l'issa. It has one use, one significant use, and that's enough. Now, the only reservation that is are you using the place or not? If you're not using the place, this would be basically a halacha. You have to keep it because, as Rabbi writes, the real Shabbos'dik, the real covered Shabbos is to follow halacha. Now, what could be important point to mention, sometimes it happens that the candles fall on the floor and they're scattered all over the place. So pashtus, the same thing applies. If you need the place, you can't walk on candles, so you pick up the candles, be a dime, and put it away. But here we come to a point that we once mentioned a few weeks ago. Mr. Berurah says it in Sivkot Yud Beis. Let's say you have a nutcracker, but you decide, I want to use a hammer today. Why not? It's mutter. Gufo. Mr. Berurah says, no. You can't abuse the heter of tzorech gufo mekomo. If you need it, fine. If you could manage without it because you have a nutcracker, don't use a hammer. Now, the Mishnah Berurah talks about tzorech gufo, but the poskim assume the same applies to tzorech mekomo. Avad is the heter to move a tzorech mekomo, but if you could avoid it, you could avoid moving Muktza. Why not avoid moving Muktza? So where this plays a role is when there are candles on the floor. You see, if it's on the table, you can move it or not. But on the floor, you don't have to pick it up. You could kick it to the side, tilt it b'gufo, we paskin is mutter. So why move it be'issa with a heter, move it be'heter without a heter? Because tilt b'gufo is not a tilt Muktza. So in this case, it's probably better, if it's going to work, to kick it to the side, no one should trip on it. But if it does the same job, like picking up every single candle, this would be better alternative. And b'chlal, mekomo is mutter like gufo. It shouldn't be done without a cheshbon. Whatever's needed is mutter. Beautiful shaila, interesting that we have it today and we have in times of the Gemara and Shulchan Aruch. Today it's called a shoe tree, but basically people put something, a form, into the shoe to keep the form of the shoe proper. In the Gemara's times, it had a dual function. Not just to keep the shoe fine, but it's hard to explain the Muktza. I'm not sure the Muktza is, but those shoes were made by hand. If you didn't have a shoe tree, the shoe wouldn't be wearable. Putting a shoe tree into a shoe on Shabbos was the issa of Makaba Patish. That's the Gemara in Shabbos, Kufam Aleph, the Mechaba in Sif Yudalad has a whole Sif about this halach. Okay, so again, the Muktza is not important, but the shoe tree is a kli shemalachti le'issa, sagt the Mechaba, because the malacha is tikkun mana. Sagt the Mechaba, so avad before Shabbos, take out the shoe tree. But let's say you forgot, or Shabbos morning, whatever the case is, you're allowed to take out the shoe tree, because it's a kli shemalachti le'issa, the tzorech mekomo. Now this is a good old-fashioned tzorech mekomo. I can't put my foot in when there's a shoe tree there. So I need the place that was vacated. This is a clear-cut tzorech mekomo without a suffix. What is a little concerning, Mr. Bura wonders. The Mechaba says, Minel Chadash, Mutal L'Shamtim Al Adfus, because it's tzorech mekomo. Why did the Mechaba quote Minel Chadash? What's wrong with a regular mina, an old shoe? So up to Mr. Bura, quoting Achrayim, that Nokat Chadash L'Rebusa, that even though it's very tight because it's a new shoe, so then you have to take it out biyadayim. It will not just shake it out. You can't shake it out. You have to pull it out. Oh, you're pulling out Muktza? Why are you doing that? This is tzorech mekomo is mutter. But hu adin avadas mutter in an old shoe where you could shake it out. Now, he doesn't say clearly, but it seems that he means to say is that pulling it out avadas mutter, but even shaking it out is mutter. Frag to Mr. Bura, why is that so? If you could shake it out, so why move it? If you could do it heter, why do it be'issa? So here the Pais can point out, and the Mishmur said, okay, if it's not easy to shake it out, it's pretty wedged in, then you can be makel. That means to say, if you could get it out without pulling it, shaking it out, you should do so. Why is that? It's the same tzorech mekomo. Evidently, if you could avoid doing an issa, avoid doing an issa. That's the first category, the real McCoy tzorech mekomo. The next category is what we're going to say is the expanded tzorech mekomo, and I'll explain. Let's say you have a hammer on the table, a big table. It's a small family of Shabbos. None of the children came. 2 people on a table, a big table. There's a hammer on the other side of the table. So that's not tzorech mekomo, right? No shayla. But let's say you want to change the tablecloth Shabbos morning. So you can't change the tablecloth if the hammer's on the table. So I want to pick up the hammer and put it down and change the tablecloth. Is that considered tzorech mekomo? Because the Maisa, even after all is said and done, I'm not using the place where the hammer was. So, but then again, I need it out of there so I could use the place. Or, I want to get a sefer from the shelf, and my mouth, someone put a pushka or a hammer right in front of the place where I need that sefer. My rashba is blocked. So I want to move the pushka, or which is a machlis to hold money, or the hammer to get to the rashba. But I'm not using the place where the rashba was occupying. But then again, I have to slide it out. So l'chayra, these are not the regular tzorech mekomo, but it's good enough. Because it's not, I want it out of here. I need this place to be vacated to get the sefer. Or I need this place to put on the tablecloth. And that's what I saw, the Shmir Shabbos, who says, Stam Shabbos'dig is not a heter. He says, but, and he gives these examples. If you need to take off the hammer to fold the tablecloth and get a new one, and or if something's blocking access to a sefer or food, whatever it is, that's also tzorech mekayim. I mean, the best mashal is you have a hammer on a sweater, and you want to wear a sweater because it's getting cold. So you're not using the place of the hammer dafka, but I got to get it off to get my item. So this we're going to say is the expanded type of tzorech mekayim. Dahainu, I'm not using the place mamish, but I must get it out of here to get use of the place. The point is that we have to realize that the fact that I have to get something, and this in the way, is also tzorech mekayim. I'll give you a wonderful example. Someone's going to the mountains, he had a whole list to bring, and he got everything on the list, put it in his car, drove to the mountains. Friday night, he chap oivei. I brought everything up to the mountains, I left everything in the car. So now the shaila is, he has items in the car that he needs, and it's Shabbos. So if he has a normal car, you open the door, the light goes on, the alarm goes on. I'm talking about a no-frills car. It barely works, but opening the door does nothing. The question is, can he open a car door on Shabbos? It sounds outrageous. Isn't the car Muktza? But then again, what type of Muktza is a car? So, I think the Mechabad, I know Mechabad Ruach HaKodesh, we see it here also. Mechabad and C Beis, based on Gemara in Erev and Avkuf Beis, says, Kol Kli, afilu hu gadol v'kaved, no matter how big the keli is, loy nizbatel shem kli mimenu, loy play gadloi, v'loy play kavdoi. Once something is a keli, it could be humongous. It doesn't make a difference. A keli, bleibt keli. Now this is a chiddush you should know. Because in Ilchas Tumah, something that's big that you can't move is not a Shem Keli. So why here is it a Keli? Evidently, Muktza is totally in Keli. Now, what is the Mechaber talking about? The Mishnah in fact quotes the Gemara, it's so big you need a few people to carry it. I'm thinking back to the times that Mechaber, times that Gemara, what did they have that's so big you can't move it? But today, it's mamish a car. A car is probably the biggest malachti le'issa known to mankind. Thousands of malachas being done per minute with the RPM, if you know the Metzias. But a car is the best example of a klisha malachti le'issa. So to open the car door would be l'tzorech mekayimai. I have to get into the car, and that's blocking my access. It's like moving a hammer to get a sefer. So this would be a perfect example of klisha malachta le'issa l'tzorech mekayim. Good. Baruch Hashem. Wonderful. Question. When I finish my shtick, can I close the door? Well, that's not tzorech mekayim. So if this happens in the city and you have a very narrow driveway and you like to go there, it's blocking your ability to walk in the driveway. Tzorech mekayim. If it's in the mountains and a chanami, you have a problem. What's the heter? It's not tzorech mekayim. So Shlomo Zalman in Shmir HaShabbos says a chiddush in Perek Chaf Sif Pei. He discusses this halacha, and he says that really part of the use of a car is to keep items safe. So he wants to say closing the car door is tzorech gufo of the car. I want to keep the car in a situation that is closed and safe. No one will steal my items. Now, you might think, what? That's mechamal l'tzeil. But it's not true. I'm not moving the Muktza mechamal l'tzeil. I'm using the Muktza to save an item. It's not mechamal l'tzeil. That's a legitimate tzorech gufay. Beautiful yesod. The car's use is mutter. This is part of the car's use. Now, Rav Moshe, and this is Rav Moshe's yard coming up soon, in Chelik Hey Simon Chaf Aleph, Sif Yud Aleph, he writes, closing a car door, he says, is not a problem for a different reason. Because he says a car was designed to drive with and to use it as a storage. So he considers a car door being a tzorech, a klisha malachta heter. Now, I don't know, this is written, at least, again, Moshe was nifta 40 years ago, but maybe 50 years ago, A car was used to store things. But it's a chiddush to me because even a pot, Bialacha's famous Yisoid, we store things in a pot, but doesn't make it a klisha malachte heter. It has to be what it's roiv tashmishay. What is roiv tashmishay of a car? So I don't know, but I do know one thing. Rav Shlomo Zalman's Yisoid is definitely understandable. This is tzorech gufo of the car. Now, Lamaisa, you should know one thing, that a car does have a heter of tzorech gufo. And whether you know this or not, in Eretz Yisrael, when there are many different Shabbos'dig going on, Maron, Tzvas, Tveria, a lot of things that are doing, and people cannot afford staying in a hotel or a motel for Shabbos, they sleep in the car. It's a legitimate tzorech gufo. It's you take care of the lights and the alarm and the shirt. There's no problem whatsoever. Someone washed laundry before Shabbos, forgot to take it out of the dryer. Shabbos, he wants to get the clothing in the dryer. Is it mutter to open a dryer door? So a dryer door is definitely a klisha malachta le'isa. But then again, you have to get access to the inside of the dryer. So opening the door would be a tzorech mikoimoi. Closing the door is a problem because you don't need to get to the dryer. So if it's in a small room and you have to walk there, it's tzorech mikoimoi. If it's in a basement, no one goes anyhow. So leave the door open. Now, unless there's a chashash, children will go into it, and then it can be dangerous. They get locked in it. So then you have to close it. The sakana. Maybe you should push it, tilt the begufay. But someone told me, it's tzorech mekayme because the kids want to play in it. I says, close door and don't let the kids play in it. It's a very dangerous place to be. There's no air in it. Opening an oven door. Think about this objectively. Opening an oven door. An oven is also a perfect klisha malachta issa. It's made to bake and cook. But then again, I have to get to the food. What's the heter to close the oven door? So this is pashut. Because if I keep it open, all the air will go out. So this is definitely a tzorech mekayma, a tzorech gufay of the door. It should be functional. One function of the door of a car, of a oven is to keep the heat within. So opening and closing an oven door, if there's food in it, would be mutar al tzorech mekayma and or tzorech gufay. A washing machine, we don't use on Shabbos. Obviously, that's a real machtal issa. But let's say a child dirtied his clothing and has an unpleasant odor, and you want to get rid of it on Shabbos. What do you do with it? So a great eitzah, open the washing machine door, drop it in, when there's no water in it, of course, close it, so you get rid of the smell, and shalom al Yisrael. But what's the heter to open the washing machine door? So again, this is weiter a tzorech gufay on both ends. I'm using the washing machine, even though it's machla issa, the tzorech heter. This is tzorech gufay and would be mutter. Someone had, out in the mountains, he has his private mailbox. A small little box that they have, they don't have it too much around here, but it's on a peg. Today we see it for newspapers rather. But anyhow, so he once had this child. He was walking out of his bungalow, whatever bungalow colony, leaving the Erev, and he was carrying something. So he had a good idea. I'm still in the Erev, I'm still in my area. So he opened the mailbox, put the thing he was carrying in, closed it, came back and picked it up. Then he chapped a mailbox. What's a mailbox made for? To storage the mail. Why is that a klisha malachta le'isa? So the emes is the same heter. So gufay or mekayme. But don't be mat to open the mailbox, take out the mail, because mail in itself is muktza. But this would be a way you have a heter to open a mailbox. An item fell behind the refrigerator or the oven. Can I move the refrigerator oven? Of course, when it's possible, when it's not attached to the wall, on Shabbos to get to an item. So a refrigerator is at most a klisha malachta le'isa. Maybe it's even malachta heter. You open and close it to get food, but anyhow, it's not worse than malachta le'isa. So opening it to get items is mutter. So moving it to get behind the refrigerator is a machmas mekayme. Oven has a problem, because if an oven, which typically an oven is on Shabbos, was Bein Hashmos, had a fire burning, so it's a bus of the Eish. So it's more than just a Klisha Malach Til Issa, it becomes a bus of the Eish. That would be a problem of moving it, unless you know for sure, for some reason, that there was no fire when it came Bein Hashmoshes. A beautiful shaila, which you see the sugya in a most exquisite turn. People today have notebooks or loose leaves, and they write Chalushei Torah. The shaila is you want to move pages to get to what you need. The problem with the pages on the top are blank papers. Now, blank papers, Magen Avraham, Mr. Burr, right, is Muktza machsar and kiss. Today, it's worth about a penny and a half, not a chsar and kiss. But it's still Muktza, Klisha Malach Til Issa. So how could you move blank papers to get to the Torah? You're moving Muktza. So the Shmir Shabbos says an incredible Yisoid, which is very mistaver if you hear it, in Perek Chav Ches, Sefer Aleph, and he says that you're right. The blank papers are Muktza, but you want to get to your Chiddush, the written page. So you're moving the Muktza to get to the one you need. That would be Tzorech Mekaymai. That's our expanded form of Tzorech Mekaymai. You need the access to get to the right page. And that's what he wants to say. But I did see in a bigger Chiddush, the Chutshani in Chela Gimel Amid Nun Ches, and the Aruch Shabbos in Perek Yutes Ha'ara Kuf Chaf says the same thing even more, that Chazon Ish told Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who told these Machabrim, that if you have a notebook, as opposed to a loose leaf that you put pages in and out, so each page is separate, then it's Muktza, and you have to declare, can I move it to Tzorech Mekaymai? But if you have a notebook that's bound together, I mean the good old-fashioned black and white notebooks, that is Mutter even to move the pages, which is not Tzorech Mekaymai. Because once it became one notebook, and there's one page of Torah, it's all Mutter because of that one page of Torah. That's what Chazon Ish spelled out, even one page. You know, for in yeshiva, you'll know at the end of this month, you find notebooks, people left over, beautiful notebooks. The first page has the first year, and that's the end of it. So, Lamaisa, that would not be Muktza. What's the chiluk? Loose leaf, each page is separate, and this is one notebook. Next question, a guest comes to shul on Shabbos, and you want to be machzorech, he has no talis. So I'll give you my talis, I have weekday talis. You pull the talis zekel. Problem is the tefillin on top of the talis. Tefillin is Muktza, Mechaba Paskins, in Shin Ches Siv Dalit, is the Klisha Malach Til Issa. So how do you move the tefillin to get to the talis? So the emphasis is, the heter is, Tzorech Mekaymai. I have to get to the talis, the tefillin's in the way. This would be a legitimate Tzorech Mekaymai. I must mention, truth be told, tefillin should be placed not on top of the talis for a different reason. Because Sunday morning you open the talis zekel and you take out the tefillin first, to put on tefillin first. It's very embarrassing. A seuda puts on tefillin before talis. But that's the halacha. Tefillin has more kedusha than talis. So you put it side by side with the talis extending upward because it's higher, and you take the talis first. On Shabbos, that would be a better eitz as well. You pull out the talis, give it to the guest. Now, the only question is, what do you do about the tefillin and in the talis zekel now? So, if it's oid biyadai, you have it in your hand, put it right away on the side, and after you finish davening, you could put it in again, al tzoyrech of the talis, you'll have to move the tefillin zekel, that's a tzoyrech gufo of the talis zekel. A very important Mr. Bura, rather, a very big insight. Shin Yud Aleph, Siv Yud Gimel, Siv Katan Yud Gimel. There's a mason in a room, Rahman al-Litzlan, and Kahanim want to stay in their house. So Mr. Bura quotes, of course, from earlier sources, you're allowed to move the mace when it's, of course, with covered up a mace, out of the room, l'tzorech mekaymai, because he need the place where the mace is, l'chayr. Now, there's a pliya. You're not going to use the place where the mace was laying. But he doesn't mean that. He means to say that if the kohen cannot use his house because of the mace, moving the mace out is tzorech mekaymai, he gains usage of his room or his house. And that's also a tzorech mekoyme. And the feed vareinu, it's very easy to understand. This is not, I want it pony for stam, I don't like the way it looks. I want to use the room. I'm denied use of a room. And this is something that has a tremendous impact in halacha, that this would be considered tzorech mekoyme. Now, I'll give another example of tzorech mekoyme in an interesting way. Friday night you had a big oilam, so you have a big soup pot, and Baruch Hashem, it's come out gone, a little bit left over. You can't even fit this pot into the refrigerator, that's how big it is. So, you want to pour it into a smaller pot. But a pot's muktza. So, if you have a plastic container you could use, don't use a pot. But let's say you have no container. The only choice is leaving it out or putting it in a small pot. Avada, you can use a small pot, right? But here's my question. You can't find the small pot until you rummage through the shelf. We have all the pots. You have to move other pots to get to the small pot. And the small pot is muta al tzorech gufo. And moving big pots is al tzorech mekoyme. Can you have a double heter for one use? So the MS doesn't sound right, but I don't see what's wrong. If each one is muta independently, what do you care? So I didn't find anybody who says differently. I think it's muta until someone shows me that I made a mistake, and I'll be certain to change. But it seems that it's two heterim that are not a stira zelozeh. Beautiful shaila. At times, a parent's bedroom cannot have tefillin in them. So the question is, let's say there's tefillin in the parent's bedroom. So the shaila is, can you take the tefillin out so they can stay in their bedroom? Now what's the shaila? They're not using the place of the tefillin. But then again, they can't stay in the bedroom. So this, for us, should be mutter, even though it sounds very intimidating. Because if you deny usage of the room, we just saw, the Mishnah Berurah says, that's tzorech mekoyme. But Reis Apella, we have a much more specific raya. The Shmir Shabbos quotes a Yam Yisachar, I don't know who he was, but he has a skama from the Shagas Aryeh, who has this shaila. A bedroom that has tefillin, although you're not using the place of the tefillin, but if you don't move it, you can't use the bedroom, that would be tzorech mekoyme. He says, if you can make a kiss beside kiss, you cover it over doubly, keep it there. But if you can't use the room, that is tzorech mekoyme. So this is very similar to Mishnah Berurah's chiddush by the makom of the mace. Now, Lamaisa, what's really interesting about this heter is that he's not using the actual place itself. But again, denied usage is, in a certain sense, a better type of tzorech mekoyme. Now this could also be in a gay grada, when you have tefillin in a baby's room. So the baby is undressed and changed and there's diapers and dirty diapers, I don't want to say, but very inappropriate for tefillin. So better take it out than keep it in the room. Now you're not using the place of the tefillin, but denied use of the baby's room is definitely would be a heter. Now, Lamaisa, I should mention the Yam Yisachar already writes, if you could avoid moving it by making a double kisui, that's better. Tak, I found the Chutshani, Chayla Gimel Amid Pei, has this shaila, tefillin in a bedroom. He says, move it out unless you can make an eitzah of kiss b'sayich kiss, which is always the right eitzah. Ma'aseh shehaya, someone left the oven, the gas range, the stovetop on, naturally, but then he noticed that the fire was out. Sometimes we have a Leil Shabbos Toyameh, and you put the cholent back on the fire, a heavy pot, it puts out the fire. You see, because Friday night it's still heavy. The Bekitza, he has, the knob is on, it's feeding gas, but it's no fire, which is a pretty dangerous situation. Can he close the knob on Shabbos, which does no malacha, just stopping to feed gas? So, this case, you could think, it's not so hard to say, it might even be a tzorech gufo. Because Lamaisa, it's a klish lachlisa. But I want to use it. I'm using boif and heter, maybe. But without that, this would be a heter, you need the place. You can't run out of your house. Now, so you're doing it, l'tzorech mekoyme of the room. I'll say, open the windows. So I don't know if it's safe. And during the winter, it's not safe to be in open windows. So So this would be a heter to close it, l'tzorech mikayme. What?
Igniters are going
Yeah, everything.
Igniters go on when you turn it off. When you turn off.
Oh, so you have to, yeah, that's right. You have to have,
That's not circulation.
that's right. If you do it quickly, you bypass. That's good. I didn't think of that. If you turn it quickly, you bypass it. The truth is, in these cases, a goy is a better solution. But if it's late at night or early in the morning, don't call a goy. You can't get a goy. The heter is to realize this is a regular tzarech mekayme, plus other heterim as well. Someone had a very important meeting on Sunday morning, so he had everything ready, put his pens in his jacket. Bekitza, Shabbos morning, he takes out his jacket, oivei. He put his pens in the wrong jacket. It's his Shabbos jacket. Can't go to shul. Pens, it's muktza, it's carrying. Can he take out the pen from the jackets on Shabbos? So a pen is a perfect klisha malachta, and some poskim hold if you can't use the jacket, believe it or not, that would be a heter tzarech mekayme. Better would be to turn over the jacket, shake it out. But these examples are very simple. Now, I'll give you a challenging example. Someone's cell phone is right now in the sink. How it got there is not negeya. The children put it there, but not negeya. He wants to put on the sink to watch Til Sedayim, but it's going to ruin the cell phone. Taking the cell phone out is mechambel l'tzeil. Wait, but wait a second. You have to realize that he's not using the place of the cell phone. A cell phone is a real klisha malachta listen. It doesn't have a tzorech gufo to it. Hopefully, if it has a time in it, it has a tzorech gufo. But the question is it mutter to take the cell phone out of the sink? So l'maisa, it's not shaykh tilta b'gufo. So this the poskim seem to say that if you have no other sink to use, you'll be denied usage of a sink. That itself is a tzorech mekayme. Now, avada, you have to be honest. If you could manage without the sink, fine. But l'maisa, sometimes he has no other sink. So this will not be michamel l'tzeil. He's moving it not for the cell phone per se, to use a sink. The Mikdanos Aliyo has a beautiful tshuva about the whole sugya in Chelek Gimel Siman Chav Tes. He has a different shaila, but the same idea. And this, the heter, is tzorech mekayme. Muktza on the floor. It's not blocking any passage, but people step in and break it. So that would be michamel l'tzeil. But more often than not, when someone steps on an item and breaks it, he might fall and break his own bones. So that would be, besides sakana, that's tzarech mekayme. I can't walk in such a dangerous situation. And the last group of questions is the other extreme. Till now we spoke about using it directly, getting something, access, and denied usage. Our last shaila is none of the above, and I'll explain. Your child put on one of these musical toys, and it's making a lot of noise. You just changed the battery, so it's going to go until Pesach straight. But zichar the whole Shabbos. And you want to learn, you want to sleep, it's just disturbing you. So if l'maisa, you can't learn or sleep in the room because it's so noisy, that might be the heter tzarech mekayme. Because a musical toy is a malachta l'issa. So pick it up and take it out. But let's say it's not so bad. You'll manage. But I definitely want it out. It's just disturbing me. But I'm not going to leave the room if there's no other choice. So the shaila is that considered tzorech mekayme or not? I want it panui for my convenience. But I'm not going to lose the usage of the room. So this is basically what we said earlier. That something that is just disturbing, but it's not going to deprive you of the use of the room, it's not a heter. Rav Moshe in Chelek Hey, Siman Chav Beis, Yivkot Lamed Aleph, was asked about something that's not covered Shabbos, it's not Shabbos, like we say, and he wants to move it. So Moshe says that the greatest Shabbos or covered Shabbos is when you're not metaltel dava she'asa. So basically, leave it. So if this musical instrument is not really so bad, it's just, not Shabbos'dig, it just doesn't, it's not in the feel of things, better leave it there, don't move it away. If it's taka disturbing, and you can't sleep or learn, then you're denied use of the room. You have a heter. Now, one of the halachic poskim has a chiddush. If you have not just a hammer, you have a hammer and you have screws and you have all these different things. I guess before Sukkot it happened. Shabbos before Sukkot, he's still in building. But it's almost like a graf shari. No, graf shari is a special heter. If it's so disturbing, like a graf shari, avad it's mutter. But typically, when something is not Shabbos'dig, keep it there. That is the greatest covered Shabbos. Question. Beautiful shayla. Someone has a cell or an alarm ringing and it's not going to stop. Or a smoke alarm that's ringing. So in all these cases, if he can't stay in the room with that noisy ringing, so even though the smoke alarm and a cell phone is a malachta l'issa, this is tzorech mekayim. And that's the chayr pasha. But here's a beautiful shayla. Someone decided Shabbos morning, he's getting up 7 o'clock in the morning, he's going to learn, it's going to be gewaldig. He set his cell phone for 7 o'clock a.m. Good. Friday night, he started having a panic attack. Oh, I'm getting up so early, it's not good for me. Forget about it. But the cell phone is in his room. So he wants to move the cell phone out of the room because he doesn't want him to wake him up tomorrow morning. Is it mutter? Because right now, a cell phone is Muktza. There's no tzorech gufo or makayimai. He's not using the cell phone. So, enechanami. This wouldn't be a heter mitzaratzvay. But if he can't sleep in his room all night because he's going to wake him up at 7 o'clock, it's like the tzorech makayimai. He needs the room. The best thing is get up in the morning. But Lamaisa, that's not a problem. If he can't use his bedroom because it's going to wake him up, it's a regular noise that's disturbing, that's depriving him the use of the room. And this techara should fit into the heter. In other words, it's very similar to the sink. That you know the sink, he's allowed to take out the cell phone from the sink. You see a child has his hands full of crayons or markers, and he's up to no good. He's going to either write on the walls or on the windows, something. But they're all Muktza. Can you take that out of the child's hand to prevent any damage? So I know it doesn't sound so, politically correct, but what's the heter? You're not using the place in the child's hands. So best thing would be either tell him to drop it or shake it out of his hand. Now to move a child is carrying Muktza is a problem with Shulchan Aruch. But if you just bang it out of his hand, that would be the best eitzah, or tell him to stop and drop it, and then you could kick it to the side. But just to prevent damage from this occurrence, the would not be a heter. I saw a beautiful shayla in Eretz Yisrael, even in America, sometimes it comes up. They need a guard watching. In Eretz Yisrael, this is very common. The kid says someone has a rifle on his shoulder, and he's the guard over Shabbos. Now, it's not easy. I never had a rifle on my shoulder, but it's very heavy. He wants to move from the left shoulder to the right shoulder. Is that considered moving Muktza? Rifles at Machtel Issa. So the poskim say, if you can't bear to have it on your left shoulder, that's tzorech mekayimai. His shoulder should not be irritated. So it's more than just a mokim panui, but it's something that he needs pashit for himself. Reb Shlomo Zalman in Shulchan Shlomo Amud Chavdal, you can look it up, he says that be'emes, a gun is malachta leheter. Because the main function of the gun is scare off people. Sometimes the person that's carrying it doesn't know how to shoot the gun for the life of him. So it's not the shooting. It's the hafchada. It's a malachta leheter. If it ever comes to it, he has to shoot. True. Then, malachta leheter. But he wants to say it's malachta leheter. Okay. There's a muktza on a sefer. There's a pen on a sefer. And it's irritating you. Can I pick it up, the covers for the sefer? So again, that's not really tzorech mekayimai. I don't need a place where the muktza is sitting. Is pasnished. Pastye. Keep Shulchan Aruch. Don't move muktza. Better would be pick up the sefer, use the sefer, and the pen goes falling off. That's a tiltum and a tzad, the tzorech davar mutter. Now there's a famous meister, Chaim once spotted like a shemus, like a piece of paper of a Gemara. It wasn't even legible, but it was Torah. So the disciple told him, pick it up. Even though it's Shabbos, even though it's Muktza, because it's covered of the sefer. Chazon Ish said you shouldn't have picked it up. Because who said it's Doicha Muktza? So our case is probably the same. Beautiful shayla. A guy borrowed your sledgehammer right before Shabbos. Shabbos morning he comes and returns it and puts it down on top of a very weak table in your backyard. And in 5 minutes it's going to break the table. Can I pick up the sledgehammer to save the table? So this is mamish a Gemara. You can't take off packages from an animal just for the animal's sake because it's not tzarech mekoimai. You're taking off the hammer just the table shouldn't break. That's a real McCoy Muktza. It's not the tzarech gufo or mekoimai. You're trying to save the hammer, the table. Very nice. But that is not tzarech mekoimai. How could you talk about this shaila without mentioning the famous tumult about moving the air-conditioned vents? Let's say it's blowing on you, you want to get it off of you, so you turn it to the side. Or if you still have a fan in your house, moving the fan onto you to get the cool air, or get it off of you. Or a light, today's lights, LED, you're allowed to move. There's no H, you want to turn the light in your direction, off your direction. So very basically, the poskim seem to say, turning the fan or the light to your direction to get usage of it, even though a fan is a mlachta le'issa, that is a tzarech gufo. Turning it off of you, it shouldn't irritate you, either the light or the fan or the AC vent would be tzarech mekoimai. Because you can't stay here, it's too cold or it's too much light. So taking it off you is tzarech mekoimai, turning it onto you is tzarech gufo. Now some argue that even turning it off of you, that's part of the normal use. So it's also tzarech gufo. But in either case, both would be mutter and there's no shayla. And we'll leave you with one last shayla. I'd love to hear from the oilam because I'm still not certain. Here's a very practical, common shayla. If you still have the old-fashioned timers, you plug it into the wall, you attach your lights or air conditioning, whatever it is, and it works with two, it's called trippers. A green tripper and a red tripper. The green one puts it on, red one puts it off. So you set the air conditioner to go on 11 o'clock a.m. in the morning because you have a seuda and you want it to be comfortable. The mice got very cool and you're afraid to keep the extra on. You want to pull out the green pin so it's off and will stay off. So there's no shaila in Hilchos Shabbos whatsoever because nothing's happening. It's status quo. But the poskim all say that the green pin or red pin for that matter are Muktza. Now, the pella is about that's Muktza. Why don't we say it's the tzorech, gufo, or mekoimai? If I would take the green pin out to clean my teeth, would that be mutter? I think so. Tzorech gufo. If I take it out, I don't want it to go on. That's even more direct of a hanoah. I don't want it to put on the light. A pin is made to put in and out. Why is that tzorech gufo? So I thought it's tzorech gufo. I asked for Pams. He told me gufo zichenit, efsha mekoimai. Now, why gufo zichenit? So, what I understood he meant to say is, you're allowed to use it for a different use, a hammer to crack a nut. But you can't use a hammer to build. If this is part of the issa, putting in and out, so why is that mutter? I don't understand this, taking it out in that situation is not issa. But what did he mean, tzarech mekoimai? So I guess he means to say, if it's there, it's going to put on the light, the air conditioner, or the light, whatever it is. And you don't want that. So you want the mokim panui l'tzorech Shabbos. Maybe that's the yesod. But again, I would think that this would be a regular tzorech gufo. Again, it's made to put in and out. Rather, it could be be'issa or be'heter. But it seems that those people feel that you can't use it for its intended use, which is issa. So if you have anything better, tell me. I appreciate it. I couldn't talk to you all.
Shame, you should tell like a big yashikach to have Smith for today's share. To have a great school sponsoring a share called Ignish Heter 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Reb Chananya ben Akasha Emor Tzagel Baruch L'Zakas Es Yisrael Fig Rebel Tamit Shneim Adonai Chofetz Avan Sidka Yagdol Terve Yader.
Amen.
Okay, about the sikkim on when Muktza, the space is needed. Nobody has Muktza, everyone is needed. Okay, sikkim.
Just the Chazal, we learned that first of all, Klish Lach L'Issa, as the Goyin says, is not a full Muktza, and that's why there's a heter of Tzorech Gufo Mekoimai. Both basically are Tzorech Shabbos, of course, but that's not the main heter. The heter is you need the Guf of the item or the Mekoimai of the item. Chazal didn't asa that type of a Muktza. But it has to be either you're using the place mamish, or in expanded form, you need access to something, or you will be denied use of the room if you don't take it out. But just the fact that it's not Shabbos'dig, or as we said, it's not Micham L'Tzel, is not a heter. The maskana is that it has to be some type of direct use. Moving a hammer or a hat brush because you need the chair, moving tefillin off a stender, candle, a box of candles from a table, if it's Tzorech Mekoimai, of course. A car door could be open and closed typically because it's either Tzorech Gufo or Mekoimai. A dryer can also be the same heter, Tzorech Mekoimai, getting to it and closing it if it's Mekoimai. Opening and closing oven door is mutter for the same reason. It's a Klish Lach L'Issa, the Tzorech Gufo. A washing machine could be used at Tzorech Gufo, opening and closing it. The little mailbox can be used at Tzorech Gufo. Mekoimai is not usually shaykh. But something fell behind the refrigerator, you can move the refrigerator. With the oven also, pashtis, if it wasn't bus ben hashmashos. Loose leaf is looked at like Muktza and non-Muktza, and move the paper only is mutter when you have to get to the right paper. And as opposed to a notebook is one keli, you can move the whole thing even though most of it is Muktza. Take towels out of the tefillin zekel is mutter, even though you have to move the tefillin zekel because it's Tzorech Mekoimai, we have to get to the talis. Moving a pot to get to another pot, to use the small pot, it's both in one, but big deal. It's mutter. We saw the heter of the moving the mace and the Yam Yisach of the same heter. Denied usage of a room is mutter. The stove top fire went out, make sure to close it, either by the akum or by yourself if you bypass it, and Muktza is not the issue. Taking pens out of a jacket that cannot be used is a problem of Muktza, but it's mutter if you need that jacket. As we said, the cell phone in a sink, if you need that sink, it's mutter to take out the cell phone. Not Shabbos'dik in itself is not mutter unless you have no other choice, unless your wife says, I'm not eating in this dining room, we're not using the dining room. No, that's an ultimatum that makes it more of a no issue. Putting something on a table that might, the guy puts something on the table and it might break to keep it there, that is mutter. That is not mutter, that would be Micham L'Tzel. Moving an AC vent or a fan or a light, or if you still have it, an electric clock, is mutter L'Tzorech Gufo or Mekoimai. And they said a little bit tzarchin about the tripper, why isn't it mutter al Tzorech Gufo or Mekoimai?
About